Hi, it's Steve Rode, your Get Out of Debt guy. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably want to learn more about money, credit, and debt, or you're one of the many good people out there with bad debt and you want it to go away. But stick with me. Together we can make that happen. Either way, I'm here for you, and I believe a better and more financially successful future is ahead. It can be within your grasp. I'd like to ask you for a favor. If you find this or any of my podcasts helpful, please take a moment and leave a review on the podcast platform you're listening on. Your feedback and opinion matter to me, and if I've done a good job, your review helps others to find the podcast as well. And while you're there leaving your review, don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you can be notified when the next episode comes out. Last piece of housekeeping. If you have a question or comment you'd like to hear on an upcoming podcast, you can leave me a voice message at getoutofdebt.org/message. Or leave me a question for me to answer on my website by going to getoutofdebt.org/question. Thank you so much for being a great listener, and I'm sending you a giant virtual hug in return. And now, on with the podcast. Hey, this is Steve Rode, your Get Out of Debt guy. You might have heard in the news recently about something that sounds very exciting and could increase how much money you bring home in your paycheck each week. It's the payroll tax holiday that President Trump has signed, and it sounds like it's going to put extra money into your pocket. President Trump just signed a new executive order. It's titled Deferring Payroll Tax Obligations in Light of the Ongoing COVID-19 Disaster. For those unemployed and receiving benefits, it doesn't mean much. For people that are employed, an impression they may come away with is taxes withheld will be waived. But the executive order says the halt to the deduction of payroll taxes, including income tax, maybe Medicare, and Social Security is necessary. The executive order actually says American workers have been particularly hard hit by this ongoing disaster. While the Department of the Treasury has already undertaken historic efforts to alleviate the hardships of our citizens, it is clear that further temporary relief is necessary to support Americans working during these challenging times. To that end, today, President Trump says, I am directing the Secretary of the Treasury to use his authority to defer certain payroll tax obligations with respect to the American workers most in need. This modest, targeted action will put money directly in the pockets of American workers and generate additional incentives for work and employment right when the money is needed most. The important word to watch for in that White House statement is defer. According to the executive order, payroll taxes will not be withheld from September 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. But watch out for the payroll tax deferment trap. The word defer is so incredibly important because while payroll taxes may not be withheld from your paycheck, that doesn't mean you won't owe them. It puts more money in your check from your employer today, but the big bill may come due at tax time. The language of the executive order is a bit vague as well. It says it applies to any employee where the amount of wages or compensation as applicable during any bi-weekly pay period is generally less than $4,000. And that word generally needs some definition. While the tax is not deducted from your paycheck will not be subject to any penalties, interest, additional amount, or addition to the tax you will still owe those taxes. According to the executive order, it is hoped that the taxes due may be forgiven, but absolutely don't count on that. The order says the Secretary of the Treasury shall explore avenues, including legislation, to eliminate the obligation to pay the taxes deferred pursuant to the implementation of this memorandum. Explore does not mean will be. So an example of the amount of tax this will put back in your paycheck is that if you make $500 a week, you'll have about $31 more in your paycheck, and you'll owe about $527 at the end of the year. Look, I fully admit that I'm not a fan of tax surprises and owing taxes later. That personal foible of mine might cloud my opinion, but if I had a choice of saying no thanks to a payroll tax holiday for 3 months, I sure would. I mean, why kick the can down the road if the taxes will be due anyway, if they're not eventually forgiven by some undefined and undetermined process later? This is Steve Rode, your Get Out of Debt guy from getoutofdebt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.